The final item of clothing we're going to make is the apron for Cindermouse. And so I have ironed the template onto the piece of linen. You'll notice the piece of linen is a lot bigger. This is because I wanted to allow enough fabric for if you make a mistake with one, you've still got enough to try again. This step is not difficult at all, but sometimes the linen is quite fragile, so if you unravel a little too much on the edges, or if you are not happy with the way you've gathered it or something like that, there's just enough here to have another try if you need to. Don't let that worry you. There's no reason that you should mess it up, but just in case, there's a backup there. What you need to do when you place the template on your linen, you should make sure that you get it in line with the grain. So don't kind of put it sideways over here, because we're going to be using the fact that linen unravels and frays, we're going to be using that to our advantage. So you want to get it as straight along those lines, along the warp and weft, as you can. So once I've just ironed that on, just as we did with any of the felt pieces, and use your embroidery scissors to cut out the shape. Now you can peel off the template, and what we need to do is unravel some of the threads from these edges. So if you pick them, they will naturally come away, and you want to take probably between 2 and 3 from each side. What this is doing is it's just a way to finish the linen so that it's less likely to unravel any further. Once you've taken off those few edges, it just makes it a bit more resilient, whereas if you cut it and it's raw on this edge, if you start pulling it, you'll get bits coming off. So it's a lot easier to voluntarily fray bits. This is why you want to make sure you've cut it as neatly on the grain as you can, because you want these lines to be relatively straight. If you've cut it wonky, you're going to be having massive wedges coming out of this these frayed edges. So I'm going to take off 3 threads from each side, and you want to do that on all 4 sides. And then excuse me, then we're going to fold over one of the longer edges of the rectangle, and you want to fold it over by about 1/2 centimetre or 1/4 of an inch, roughly, maybe a bit more than that. And then you're just going to finger press it, so really get that crease in there well. And then take your needle, a strand of cream thread that you've so cut a piece of cream thread to about 1 metre long or 40 inches. Take one strand out, fold it in half like we've been doing all along, and leave the loop at one end. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather this very like we gathered the neckline to the dress. To start with, we'll start on the back. You come up from, probably you want to be stitching about halfway down this fold, and start a little way in from the edge. You don't want it to unravel. So bring it through, leave a loop, and make a small stitch. Go through the loop and pull it tight to hold. And then you're just going to make a gathering running stitch, exactly like we did for the dress, except maybe even a little smaller. So you're going to make these gathers teeny tiny all the way along that fold. You're stitching about halfway down the fold the whole way along. I'm running out of thread, so I'm just going to pull some of that through. So it's like a concertina. Once you've stitched all the way along, gather the fabric, and what we're going to do is press in some of these creases just with our fingers. So if you leave it like it is, it won't sit very flat against her dress, so you want to kind of create some creases down here. So just fold little bits over and press them with your hands. Because it's linen, linen creases very easily, as you'll know if you've got any linen clothing, and by the end of the day you look like you've been rolling through a hedge. So press some creases into it to make it look a little bit more apron-like. And then we're going to take a couple of stitches back on ourselves at this end, just to secure those gathering stitches. So just make a couple of stitches on top of each other. Which means that the start and the finish of this gathering is held fast. And now what you need to do is get your mouse, get the hanging loop out of the way, and this is going to gather up this dress even more. So at the moment it looks like she's wearing a sack. The point of this apron, apart from the fact that it's an apron and she's Cindermouse and she's doing lots of cleaning, is that it's going to pull all this in really tight and give her a nice gathered bodice here. So just place the apron in the centre and hanging loop out of the way, and pull, I'm getting in a right angle here, pull the thread all the way around her once and stitch into this end of the apron. And you want to pull it tight and then kind of rearrange everything so that everything is gathered up how you want it to be. It will take a little bit of rearranging. So you want to rearrange all these gathers and things as well. And you're basically, once you've got it where you want it, you're going to wrap this around here some more to make it really, really secure. I would spend longer organising this, I'm just showing you this for the video. Wrap the thread round lots of times, secure it with a couple of back stitches at the back of her dress. So I just make a couple of tacking stitches there and trim off the excess thread. And then to cover up that skinny bit, what you're going to do is take your remaining cream thread, all 6 strands, and just wrap that around the top like a sash as many times as you want until you're happy how it looks, obviously much more neatly than I'm doing there, and tie it in a bow at the back with a double knot around the bow, and that's her clothing finished. So I'm just going to do that all properly and take my time over it, and then I'll just come back and show you that from the reverse. Right, so I just want to show you how the apron should look when you've taken your time over it properly. So I've sewn the apron on as I showed you, and then I've tied it, I've made a sash out of thread which I've kind of tucked underneath the top bit there so that the apron sits on top of the sash, and then I've just tied it into a bow at the back. And that's all of her clothes finished, so then all she needs is a broom.